What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is my ranking and reviewing of my favorite Allman Brothers albums. It's actually a ranking of all the Allman Brothers albums, but just in the order of my favorite. How do we get to the Allman Brothers? From Frank Zappa, Whipping Post! Say that again. Whipping Post! Hum a few bars and maybe we'll play along with you. Think it must be a John Cage composition. And then years later, actually playing the song as a live encore. Frank, somebody called out for him to play it in a iconic, classic, famous 1974 concert as documented on the best Montana ever on You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore Volume 2, Whipping Post. It became Montana, parentheses, Whipping Post, the slowest version of Montana I think I've ever heard. And then in the 80s, when Bobby Martin joined the band, Frank started covering it pretty much in earnest. I mean, tweaked the solo section, but the song itself was pretty stay true to the original. So that's how we get to the Allman Brothers. It's not a John Cage composition, Whipping Post. It is an Allman Brothers composition. Pretty much the godfathers of Southern rock, right? I mean, on the Mount Rushmore of Southern rock, I would put, obviously, the Allman Brothers. They invented it. They started it. They defined it. They pretty much, their sound is the Southern rock sound. I would put Lynyrd Skynyrd on there. I think Lynyrd Skynyrd kind of maybe toughened it up just a little, took a little bit of the jazz out of it, made it hit a little harder, made it more of a rock and roll blue collar thing, but still very Southern rock. Some good stuff. I would put Drive-By Truckers on that Mount Rushmore of Southern rock. And then that fourth spot, I think there's an argument for, you'd have to make an argument for a band who would be the fourth, or even if you disagree, but that would be my Mount Rushmore of Southern rock. Allman Brothers for sure, Lynyrd Skynyrd for sure. I would make an argument for Drive-By Truckers. That fourth, still that door's open for a Southern rock fourth on Mount Rushmore. Though there are a lot of Southern rock bands out there. Anyways, that's it. Yeah. So pretty much, I would say the sound they debuted with way back on their first album was their sound. You know, they had several different lanes they operated in on the Southern rock front. They had sort of the jazzier instrumental jams, the sort of jam band leanings. You had your kind of bluesier type Southern rock numbers. You had your Dickie Betts, more countrified numbers. And then you had your sort of rock lane, Southern rock, Greg Allman type thing. And that was pretty much it. And very little deviation from that norm. But no matter where the album falls on this list, there's at least one solo that just kicks butt. There's the musicianship is always fantastic, even on those bottom albums. And in those sort of middle albums on this list, when maybe the songs don't stand out, there are jams and solos or ending jams or just moments that like, okay, I'm glad I'm listening to this because the musicianship is always quality. So anyways, yeah, I'm just going to go in the order of my least most favorite. I'll put the list on the screen afterwards. Saw them live a whole bunch. Can't say I listened to these studio albums very much. Maybe the ones at the top of the list. Never really stayed up with them after, like, once I got their initial albums as they released stuff in that sort of comeback era in the 90s and on. I didn't really listen to their albums, though I would always go back and see them live. And eventually I'd pick up the album and pretty much know a lot of the songs because I had seen them live throughout the years. So anyways, that's it. We went to a show in Shoreland once, probably one of the first, I think the second time I saw them in Shoreland when I was in college. And we digested we had a mushroom pizza that opened our minds in fantastic ways. And after we ate that mushroom pizza and enjoyed a absolutely amazing Allman Brothers show, it's probably like 91 Shoreline maybe. On the way home, my girlfriend wanted to listen to Frank Zappa. She was trying to get into it, had yet to get into it, him. And after eating this mushroom pizza, she was like, expose me to some kind of music that I'm going to absolutely love right now. So we listened to Roxy and Elsewhere on the way home, and that kind of did it. That sort of rewired her brain to permanently love Zappa. And I still have, I just remember this. She used to work at a sandwich shop. And after that, she would take in the CDs to the sandwich shop. And then I would write the numbers that she either could not listen to or that had suggestive lyrics, as I put on this one. And I still have the tape on all my Zappa CDs. So if you were in Berkeley in like 91, 92, you might have come into a sandwich shop that was playing one of my CDs. But anyways, I'm rambling. On to the first. There are 12 albums, only doing the studio albums. There's going to be a separate video eventually with the live albums. because that's pretty much their bread and butter. But anyways, on to number 12. So I am doing number 12, number 11, and number 10 at once because these three albums are, I think, the sort of low point of the Allman Brothers' career, right smack dab, almost in the middle of it. And it is their albums, their sixth, seventh, and eighth, the eighth being number 12, the seventh being number 11, the sixth being number 10, and that would be Brothers of the Road is number 12. And then we go to Reach for the Sky, would make number 11, and then Enlightened Rogues would be number 10. And essentially, after they made Win, Lose, or Draw, which kind of, I guess, was the album that broke the band up, an album I kind of like, which I'm not sure a lot of people do, but I think it's actually a pretty good album. They lost their bass player, they lost Lavelle on keys, the band essentially broke up. Those two people didn't come back. And then they kind of got the band back together after a couple years. And so they had brought in a couple new players with sort of a new lineup, slightly new lineup, different sort of lead and rhythm guitar player. Again, Dickie Betts is still there. Greg Allman is still there. Butch Trucks is still there. But they have some different people coming on board. And they put out, this run kind of has three albums, and it's these three albums. And the first one, especially Enlightened Rogues, kind of just sounds like this is what the Allman Brothers are supposed to sound like album. So like they got this new band together and like, let's make sure we put out an album that sounds like the Allman Brothers. And then the second and third albums that come after that, number 11 and 12, just get further and further away from that till we're just to this weird generic 80s rock with slight southern roots and maybe a little countryside. It's just kind of bland, forgettable stuff. Brothers of the Road, it's a bad album when it's the very first Allman Brothers album that did not have an instrumental song, which essentially means like the guaranteed highlight of any album almost, those instrumental like jazz rocky type explorations, jam band leanings, that's not on this album on number 12, Brothers for the Road, of the Road. So right then like, okay, right, whatever, already we're losing sight of what the Allman Brothers really are. And really there's just not much on this album that I think is just, every once in a while there's a good solo or something good, but Brothers of the Road is a pretty rough one. Reach for the Sky, we're definitely on the way for that rough patch. You can tell we're heading in that direction. Doesn't seem like the brakes are working. We're heading just straight into like the abyss. There is one pretty good song from the Madness of the West, which is like a almost 7-minute like instrumental. That is the instrumental jam of the album. It is sort of the highlight of the album. But then at the same time on this album, you have this song called Keep On Keepin' On. And I'm not even really sure what musical genre that is. Like, it's bad. It's just so all over the map in a way that doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. To me, it's like the most lost thing the Allman Brothers have ever recorded. Keep On Keepin' On. It's just an absolute head scratcher. But From the Madness of the West is actually not a bad little number. And then on Enlightened Rogues, I think, is by far of these three, by far the strongest of them all. But there is sort of a sense like this is Allman Brothers just being Allman Brothers, right? Like we're hitting all the right notes. We got something that maybe sounds like Blue Sky, something that maybe, has an instrumental jam. We got something that's like a straightforward rocker. There's a couple kind of good songs on here. It's not definitely as bad as that, but for the most part, all three of these just sound like a lost band, just either not sounding like the Allman Brothers and going in a safer, popper, cleaner direction, or working too hard to sound like the Allman Brothers, but just kind of forcing the issue, and it's almost like a color by numbers type thing. But the instrumental on Enlightened Rose, I think, is Pegasus. It's actually not a bad song, but for the most part, save these albums until you're sure whether or not you like the Allman Brothers, because they're not going to convince you to like them otherwise. But that is my 10, 11, and my 12. On to number 9. Number 9 is Seven Turns. This is sort of their comeback album of 1990. After they made the 3 albums I just talked about in the late 70s, early 80s, they broke up again in 82. They came back in 90. And this time we still have Allman, we still have Dickie Betts, Butch Trucks is there, Jaimo is on drums, but now Warren Haynes has joined the band on guitar. And this is like from the very first track, Good, Clean, Fun, you can tell the band is back. Like it feels like the Allman Brothers, but it doesn't feel forced. It feels live, it feels loose, it feels jammy. The energy is good, like it works. They've not in any way changed their sound. Like that's not something they're going to do. Their first album, their 12th album, kind of all sound the same and are mining the same, or in the same mine in the same veins, whatever. Other than those 3 I just talked about, which are like these weird, just lost years. We're back to a good Allman Brothers sound. I think the songs on this, there isn't really for me an absolute standout song. I think that what stands out on this album is just the, hey, we're back. And every time there's a solo, anytime there's anything sort of a jam, anytime, the singing is great, the songs are great, everybody sounds good and they sound in good spirits. But those instrumental moments, there's time when the band is just being the band, that this absolutely like takes it to the next level. And you're like, okay, this is a really good album. The instrumental jam on here is like this 8-minute number called True Gravity, comes towards the end of the album. One of my least favorite of their instrumentals, they're definitely, and I'm not saying this to put it down, but there's like a Jeff Beck jazzy fusion-y vibe, I think, to some of it, that's not the Allman Brothers lane. Like the Allman Brothers, it's that jazz rock, kind of leaning even towards some Santana energy with the percussion. They had a lane. This one seems to be getting a little too just, I don't know, reminds me of Jeff Beck in ways that doesn't work from the Allman Brothers. Still might be the best track on here because it is the instrumental jam track. But yeah, a good, pretty solid album. I don't think there's anything bad on here. But over the next couple years, as this lineup would stay together, they would make better albums, I would say. But yeah, that's number 9, Seven Turns. Number 8 is 2003's, I was going to say 12. I don't know why I thought it was much later than it was. 2003's Hitting the Note, which is the last album they put out. No Dickie Betts. And we have Derek Trucks on guitar and Warren Haynes on guitar and Burbridge on bass. Greg Allman is still there, obviously. Not obviously, but he's here. Butch Trucks on drums. Jaimo on percussion and drums. And this is a really good last album. In a way, it kind of feels like a last album. There's a song called Old Before My Time and another one called Old Friend, which both have like turning the page style vibes, like this part of my life is over and I'm moving on, sort of that kind of reflective. And there is something very, I think very suitable or very perfect about these 2 songs on their final album. Couple great songs early. I think the High Cost of Low Living, the second song, is some really good loose jammy energy. Like an 8-minute song. Desdemona is like a longer 9.5-minute, but slow burning, kind of more moodier type built-in song. Some of these songs have absolutely fantastic ending jams. Woman Across the River has one. Rocking Horse is just an all-around really good high-energy song. Instrumental Illness is the instrumental jam on this album, which is absolutely fantastic. Kind of just goes on and on and on. There's almost like a fake ending, and then we return to it. There's some really, really, really good stuff on here. But most of the really, really good stuff, I think, tends to be like the solos and the jams and sort of the energy that's carried through. And I do think like the middle of the album, the songs kind of maybe just get maybe a little bit samey. And it's not until we get to like the last minute and a half where things are soloing that I'm like, okay, this was a good song. It is a 75-minute album. So I think that's part of the problem. I think had they pared it down to a good 45, even 50 minutes, this jumps quite a ways up the list. because there was some fantastic stuff on here, and the guitar playing, sort of the Haynes versus Trucks balance works really well. Kind of like an early Allman versus Betts type balance with sort of the clean beauty and the sort of more aggressive nature. So everything works well musically about this. This is a great swan song, really good album. I do think maybe it's just a little too long. Maybe they could have benefited from a little bit of editing. But for the most part, yeah, I think it's a pretty solid album. That's my number 8, Hittin' the Note. Number 7 is 1991's A Shade of Two Worlds, their 10th album. This is with Betts and Warren Haynes on guitar. And this is pretty much the same sort of energy as the previous one, Seven Turns. So this is the second one after their comeback. And it's just, yeah, really good energy, good Southern rock vibes. Again, it's loose, it's live, it's jammy. Got some excellent songs in here. Probably there's Kind of Bird, the long instrumental on this is a very Bird, feels like an obvious reference to Charlie Parker. There's a very jazzy feel to this. Nobody Knows, another like really long song, definitely has some whip and post energy in there. There's definitely a little bit of like a drive in, like dun, 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 type vibe to Nobody Knows, and that song like clocks in at almost 11 minutes. Midnight Man is a really good, nice solo in it. The opening end of the line sounds great. Like pretty much everything on here, just the energy is good, the performances are strong, the solos, as always, are always worth checking out. But there's a couple songs that just absolutely elevate this, I think, higher than Seven Turns. Nobody Knows, Midnight Man, Kind of Bird, for me in particular, are kind of upper echelon, and it kind of just lifts everything else because it's a well-paced album, 8 songs, just over 50 minutes, but it just feels tight and perfect, and just, it sounds like the Allman Brothers doing the Allman Brothers thing, and they just happen to be doing it really well. Really good, solid Allman Brothers album. Number 7, Shades of Two Worlds. Number 6 is their 11th album, 1994's Where It All Begins. This is the third in their run of reunion albums. I think it's the best of the 3. I think it's just the most fun. It's the loosest. It's the most playful. Again, there's a really loose, jammy quality to it. Couple of my favorite sort of post 80, like 90s on songs are on here. The title track, Back Where It Begins, is that what I said earlier? Has a total like Franklin's Tower little vibe to it. Again, it's like a nice 9-minute long jammy song. The band would start performing Franklin's Tower live, so obviously there's an obvious maybe Dead homage here in this, but you definitely get a Franklin's Tower vibe. And then the song Warren Haynes' Soul Shine, I think is just one of the best things the Allman Brothers have ever done. Love that chorus. Just love everything about this song. Love the live performances of it. And so Soul Shine, that combination of like Back Where It Belongs, Back Where It Begins, and Soul Shine is like the third and fourth song. Just immediately can't fail after that. Mean Woman Blues has some really strong, good energy. Everything on this album is just loose, it's lively, it's fun, it's jammy. Again, we have Dickie Betts and Warren Haynes playing guitar on this. They complement each other very well. Yeah, I just have zero complaints about this album. I think this actually, also I will say this, that it was, of the 3 Allman Brothers albums that were released in this time, this was the only one I actually got in time, like right when it came out. The other ones I had kind of waited around to come across. So this one, for some reason, I hopped on board immediately and enjoyed it immediately. So that might be why it's a little bit higher. I think I've spent more time with this one. But revisiting them recently, I do think this is just a more fun, upbeat album. And that Back Where It All Begins, just trying to talk too fast. And that Soul Shine combination, to me, that just like, that's so sweet, so perfect. But anyways, another really solid sort of like 90s album, and like sort of the latter phase of their studio career. Absolutely fantastic. My number 6, Where It All Begins. 。 Number 5 is Win, Lose, or Draw. Came out in 1975. This is their 5th studio album. This is the one that apparently broke them up, which is unfortunate. I think this is a fantastic album. It definitely kind of sounds like the Allman Brothers maybe had heard Lynyrd Skynyrd and were maybe trying to like be like, hey, Southern rock can maybe be even more radio friendly and not just like deep cuts on FM radio. They played Allman Brothers all the time on KMET and KLOS in Los Angeles, but they weren't making sort of the pop rock 40 where Lynyrd Skynyrd was. There were a couple songs. And so maybe there's a little like cleaning up of the sound or maybe kind of moving more towards the mainstream. But it works. The energy is good. The performances are fantastic. You get a little bit of everything. And you get what might be one of their best instrumental songs, High Falls, which has so many wonderful things going for it. Just trying to like, it almost sounds like you get like a Steely Dan meets Mahavishnu meets a little bit of Santana. There is a really, really, really long Chuck Leavell electric piano solo that is so just the most perfect thing in the world. Like this song has so many incredible things going for it. It is an absolute masterpiece. I wanted to put this album at number 1 just to make a point about how much I love that song, but I have a song list I'm going to do later. Just a really fun album. Dick Betts is just another love song. Kind of sounds like he's trying to like mine the blue sky waters again, but I don't care. It works. Louisiana Lou is just kind of a fun, playful number. We get a nice little piano type driven, more type ballad with Greg Allman. Win, Lose, or Draw. Sweet Mama is like a nice cover, nice little kind of fun, dirty, kind of bluesy type nice cover. Yeah, it's just a really good album. Only 7 songs. It's a really nice, under 40 minutes, 38 minutes long. So it's just nice, compact. There's kind of no wasted moments. Other than High Falls, I don't think any of these songs are like absolute must hears, but they all represent certain corners of the Allman Brothers like playbook. And because there's only 7 songs, it just seems like each one kind of hits a different thing. So we have, we got a Greg Allman straightforward rocker. We got a Greg Allman slower bluesy number. We got a Dickie Betts country song. We got a Dickie Betts instrumental. You know, we have all the different flavors and we just get one really, really nice serving of them all. Just a really fun, enjoyable album. Don't listen to people who say this isn't any good. Check it out for yourself. I absolutely enjoy this. And that High Falls, fantastic. They started playing that again after they hadn't played it for years. They started playing that again towards their later years. Awesome song to bring back. But yeah, really, really, I like this. I think a really good album. My number 5, Win, Lose, or Draw. My number 4 is their 4th, Brothers and Sisters, which came out in 1973. For the most part, other than like a guest guitar player, Dickie Betts is the only guitar player on here. And my earliest memories of listening to music when I was a kid on the radio is knowing of Rambling Man and just believing pretty much in my entire life that that was sort of the iconic, perfect Southern rock song. It was just like other Southern rock was heavier, other Southern rock was acoustic, other Southern rock was jammier. But to me, I just assumed everybody agreed that was the perfect Southern rock song. Can't say it was ever my favorite Southern rock song. Knowing that song did not cause me to seek out the Allman Brothers, but I just that was always in my musical knowledge of my understanding of the world from the very beginning. A lot of that has to do with how FM DJs hyped the song up back in the day, but made perfect sense to me. Still seems like the perfect Southern rock song. The one that made me go buy an Allman Brothers album was Jessica, however, song I absolutely love from the first time I heard it. It's the instrumental on this, has one of the great, just great, all around great work, just the great acoustic work, the piano work, the solos, the energy, the melody, everything about Jessica just works for me. This is just a really solid album. We got 2 really good sort of Greg Allman sort of like performance type songs, or I guess Betts wrote one, Allman wrote the other, but just like your kind of Southern rock mainstream and Wasted Words and Southbound just have that really solid, good live energy. Ramblin' Man, an absolute classic. Come and Go Blues, some fantastic piano work on this. Jelly Jelly, nice jammy energy. Fantastic Southbound. Jessica, classic instrumental. And then Pony Boy, like a fun back porch type thing. Loose, kind of just having a good time type song. Yeah, all around, I think it's just a great country rock, Southern rock album. A little leaning more into country, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Great performances. And really, Ramblin' Man is one of those songs that it's almost cheesy. It's almost like a joke, but like just because you hear it in like used in comedies and stuff like that, but it's just like, it's Ramblin' Man, man. It just seems like a perfect Southern country rock song, right? Anyways, yeah. That's my number. What are we on? That's my number 4, Brothers and Sisters. My number 3 is Eat a Peach, which studio album-wise is their 3rd studio album, even though only half of it is studio stuff, as there's a bunch of live stuff on here. I'm only ranking the studio part. I'm not even considering the live part. I will also throw this album into the live ranking and consider the live stuff then. So it was released in 72, recorded mostly in 71, and Duane Allman passed away before it was released, but after it was recorded. So it is his last album that he will be on. And it is just, I think the studio stuff, this is pretty much the template from here on out. You get sort of a straightforward, sort of Greg Allman-led Southern rock number that you could hear on the radio, like normal radio, and Ain't Wasting Time No More. Ain't wasting time no more, cause God goes there like, well, I know, crime trains. Love that song. You get your absolute like mic drop instrumental in Les Brers in A minor, the Brothers in A minor. Starts off nice and slow and atmospheric, and then we go into this absolutely awesome sort of very jazzy instrumental thing. We get the absolutely heartbreaking Melissa, sort of a vibe Allman would try on albums that follow this, but never quite achieve again. Just absolutely awesome, heartfelt, emotional little ballad. We get Stand Back, another more traditional, like straightforward number. We get the absolutely definitive Dickie Betts Blue Sky, which, you know, a lot of Blue Skies, even Ramblin' Man was sort of an attempt to like duplicate the Blue Sky type formula. Blue Sky. We get a little instrumental called Little Martha. So we only get 6 tracks, but they are absolutely fantastic 6 tracks. I think Les Brers in A minor just lifts everything else up. But then you get Melissa, which is just almost near perfect. And then you get Blue Sky, which is just like country rock perfection. Yeah, Little Martha, beautiful little thing. Ain't Wasting Time No More. Awesome, fun live number. Yeah, really, really good. Awesome, solid album. The live stuff is also really good too, but I'll talk about that on another album. But yeah, I think this is like, you can look at a lot of albums, especially in that lost period, you know, in those late 70s, early 80s albums, what it almost seems like they looked at the studio stuff and were like, okay, we need this type of song and this type of song and this type of song and this type of song. And they used this as the template. They just weren't writing at this level or performing at this level or as passionate about the music as they were at this level. That's my number 3, Eat a Peach. Number 2 continues the trend of counting backwards from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, I am essentially arguing that they just progressively got worse after that debut album, because number 2 is their second album, Idlewild South. Yeah, this is a fantastic album, like top tier album. There's 0 things wrong with this album. Opens up with Revival, which for many, many years, I missed every time a DJ said this was the Allman Brothers, because I did not think this was the Allman Brothers. I thought this was like a one-hit wonder from like 67 or 68. This is the most hippiest thing ever. Beautifully hippie-ish. Just dun 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 dun. Love is everywhere. I mean, just cheesy in the 67 Summer of Love energy, but done so well. Can't believe more bands didn't cover this. Like, to me, this just seems like a a gimme if you're like a jam band to cover this song. But great song. Don't Keep Me Wondering, the iconic Midnight Rider. I mean, that's another song that I heard growing up that it just seemed like an instant classic. Like it just like, oh wow, of course somebody wrote a song called The Midnight Rider. This is just perfect. I mean, Midnight Rider, just I remember falling in love with Willie Nelson's Redheaded Stranger a couple years after hearing this song, only because it reminded me of Midnight Rider, and I like that sort of imagery of that. The possibly, arguably, this might be a separate list, best instrumental that the Allman Brothers ever put out in memory of Elizabeth Reed. Just absolutely beautiful, just perfection. This is the instrumental classic on this album. Awesome version of Hoochie Coochie Man. Just just destroying the scenery version of Hoochie Coochie Man. Opens up side B, and then we get a couple more originals. Greg Allman tracks, Please Call Home and Leave My Blues at Home, which are just good, solid, hit it out of the ballpark, Southern rock type numbers. So yeah, great album. No complaints. Just absolutely perfect. The only problem is it's not the first one, because the first one, man, that first one. All right. That's my number 2, Idlewild South. And number 1 is their first album, their debut album, the Allman Brothers Band, self-titled, I guess, right? Didn't even have a name. Self-titled. Yeah, this is Southern rock being born, coming out swinging, hitting you hard, dropping some instant classics, covering Muddy Waters and absolutely tearing that up. Yeah, like, no. This is perfection. Essentially, did they get worse from here on out? No. I think they're like albums like 2, 3, and 4. Like those are really, really solid albums, and probably have moments where they've lifted the art form maybe to a higher level, or maybe made it more accessible. But this is just raw Allman Brothers coming out, playing, doing their thing, doing it so incredibly well. And while doing it, maybe dropping a handful of absolute instant classics. Yeah, I mean, just it's absolutely fantastic. I definitely have a list of songs, which eventually, when it gets long enough, I might pick my best opening salvos, because in some instances it's a 1-2 punch, as it is on this album, of ways to start a career, meaning the opening 1 or 2 tracks on a debut album, just the mic drop epicness of some of them. Some of them have already been on this channel, and I've already talked about those. But this is one of those. The instrumental Don't Want You No More into an absolutely just ferocious It's Not My Cross to Bear. Just talk about introducing yourself to the world. Like, you open up with an instrumental, then you go into this absolutely just grinding, just absolutely just unforgiving, just like, It's Not My Cross to Bear. Just what a 1-2 punch to the jaw. That's just fantastic. And then from there on, you just go into some hardcore Southern rock with Black Hearted Woman. Then you cover Muddy Waters with Trouble No More, and just like drop one of the greatest sort of epic Booker T type style jams that just feels like Booker T on like speed, but it's got that like that energy and that just attack, just phenomenal. Then you go back into your Southern rock, kind of started off a little maybe softer, maybe a little more melodic, tease people into thinking something else is coming, and then hit them hard with Every Hungry Woman. Then you give them a Southern rock ballad, an absolutely moody, atmospheric, somewhat haunting, but still like sizzling and intense and slow, just like you feel like it wants to erupt at some point, but it never does, just maintains that tension. Dreams, they named a box set after this song, and that's a well-deserved song to get a box set named after it. And then you close the album out with a song that has become sort of a joke because it is so good, and there's really long versions of it on live albums, and people yell it out at concerts, and Whipping Post, people, Whipping Post, which, I'm sorry, but if you've not revisited Whipping Post lately, that opening, that opening riff, that one right after the solos before we go back into the vocals, just everything about this song. And I think one of the most important live music experiences of my life was the first time I heard Whipping Post live. I think it was on Jim Ladd's Desert Island Discs. I know it was on the radio, but hearing that full length live at the Fillmore East version changed my life, because that, especially that first solo in that song, greatest thing ever. When I finally got around to hearing this, I was a little disappointed because it's only 5.5 minutes long, but still, it's an absolute classic. But yeah, that's my number one. Their debut album, pretty much the birth of Southern rock, as it should be, as it in full form, just coming out with a full head of hair, a beard, a guitar, some percussion, just an absolute beautiful, beautiful piece of music. My number one, their debut album. That's what I got right there. That's what they look like in print. I like this band, man. I've never gone through a really, really deep Allman Brothers dive, to be honest with you. Seen them live every time I get a chance. I've even driven to Houston to see them. That's like a 3-hour drive. So I've seen them saw them a bunch of times back in the day. Really enjoyed them every time I saw them. Some really great concerts. But yeah, not something I've deep dived into, but every time I listen to them, I really, really, really enjoy them. And I do give them credit for sort of like opening up my eyes to what live music could be with that first time I heard Whip and Post back in like early high school. Might have even been like 7th or 8th grade. Might have been, yeah, I think it was about junior high. It was well before high school. It was like, it wasn't even in junior high. I think it was elementary school, to tell you the truth. It's a long time ago. But I remember hearing that, sitting in my bedroom, listening to Desert Island Discs or listening to KMET back in the day and hearing that like 20 plus minute Whip and Post and just having my mind blown. But anyways, yeah. So anyways, Allman Brothers, fantastic band, invented Southern rock. So anyways, that's all I got. Let me know what your favorite albums are, what your rankings are, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I'm going to hit the live albums probably in a couple weeks because I'm getting back into those and really enjoying revisiting those. But that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share, comment below, and go listen to the Allman Brothers. Go drop that first album, people. That thing is a classic. Peace. Talk to you later.